Beloved one, before you take another breath, know that this moment did not find you by accident. You did not open this by chance. You did not arrive here by the random turning of a wheel, and nothing in the invisible world moves without a reason woven long before you were born. I am speaking to you now, directly to the center of your chest, into that quiet room inside you where no one else is allowed, the place where you hide the tears that no one has ever seen. Listen, the select few, because the Beyond has paused their movement to send you this message, and what I am about to reveal to you will change the way you understand every lonely night you have ever endured. There is someone who has been in love with you this entire time. Not the way the world speaks of love, not the fragile and fleeting thing that comes and goes with the seasons, but a love so ancient and so relentless that it has followed you through every closed door, every betrayal, every silence that felt like abandonment. And today, by command of the Chosen who holds all things, I have been sent to show you exactly who has been loving you, when you believed no one could. Feel the weight of these words settle over you like a warm hand upon your shoulder. You have walked so long believing you were forgotten. You have looked in the mirror and asked why happiness seems reserved for everyone but you. You have watched others receive what you prayed for in secret, and you have swallowed the bitter question that rises in the throat of every soul who feels invisible, the question that asks whether you were simply made to be overlooked. But I tell you now, with the authority of the throne that sent me, that you were never overlooked. You were being watched. There is a difference between being ignored and being guarded, and for all these years what you called silence was in truth the presence of a love that refused to leave your side even when you could not feel it. The Chosen who loves you did not step away. The Chosen who loves you drew closer in the very hours you felt most alone. And if you will stay with me, if you will let these words enter you slowly, I will show you the face of that love and the reason it has waited so patiently for this exact moment to reveal itself. I know the exhaustion that lives in your bones. I have seen the nights when you lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying the words that wounded you, wondering what you did to deserve the coldness of people you once trusted. I have seen you rise in the morning and paint a face of strength over a heart that was quietly breaking, going out into the world to carry burdens no one bothered to notice, smiling so that no one would ask, laughing so that no one would see the trembling underneath. You have become an expert at hiding your pain, so skilled that even those closest to you have no idea how heavy your soul has grown. And that is the loneliest kind of suffering there is, the suffering that wears a mask, the grief that must pretend to be fine. But nothing is hidden from the eyes of the Beyond. Every tear you cried in the shower so that no one would hear was collected and kept. Every prayer you whispered when you thought no one was listening was received the very instant it left your lips. Every time you gave and gave until you had nothing left, and still no one thought to ask how you were holding on, the record of it was written in a place where such things are never lost. You have felt invisible, and I understand why. The world is loud, and it rewards those who push and shout and demand, while you, with your gentle and wounded heart, have stepped aside again and again, letting others take what should have been yours, telling yourself that maybe your time would come later, that maybe you were meant to wait. You have been the one who remembers everyone's needs and whose needs no one remembers. You have been the shoulder for 100 cries and have wept alone into your own hands. You have been strong for so long that people forgot you might need someone to be strong for you, and in that forgetting, a hollow place opened inside you, a place that whispers that perhaps you are too much, or not enough, or somehow flawed in a way that makes love pass you by. I have come to silence that whisper forever, because it is a lie, and it was planted in you by forces that feared what you would become if you ever discovered how loved you truly are. Hear me now, for this is the turning point. Everything you have suffered, every wound and every delay was seen by a love that never once looked away. And now the time of hiding is ending. The Chosen who has loved you from before your first breath has given the order that you should no longer walk in the dark about who stands beside you. There is a presence at your right hand that has never abandoned its post. There is a guardian who has fought battles on your behalf in rooms you cannot see, who has stood between you and disasters you will never know were aimed at you, who has caught you in falls you thought you survived by luck. That presence has a name, and that love has a face, and before this message ends you will know both, and you will never feel alone in the same way again. But let me pause here. The select few, because there is something you must understand about the nature of the world you cannot see with your eyes. You are living inside a story far larger than the small and painful chapter you have been reading. There is a game being played across the invisible realms, a contest between light and shadow, and though you may have felt like the smallest and most forgotten piece upon the board, the truth is the exact opposite. You are not a pawn. You are the very piece the whole battle has been fought over. The reason you have suffered so many attacks, the reason the enemy has worked so hard to convince you that you are worthless, is precisely because you are valuable beyond measure. No one wages war over what has no worth. The intensity of the assault against your peace has always been a measure of how much your destiny threatens the darkness. And this is where I must tell you about something that was prepared for souls exactly like you. A key that unlocks the understanding of this invisible war. There exists a sacred guide, a digital book placed into this world for the select few who are ready to stop being victims of a game they never understood, and it is called The 7 Blades of the Guardian, the sacred guide to break curses, seal blessings, and activate the calling of the chosen. Within its pages are the very rules that were never explained to you, the truths that were hidden so that you would remain confused and defeated, the exact way that the sword of St. Jude cuts through the chains of rejection and the wounds of a love denied. If you have felt unloved, if you have wondered who truly stands with you, this guide reveals how the blade of the great Archangel severs the lies that kept your heart in exile and seals over you the blessing of belonging that the enemy tried so hard to steal. The link waits for you at the very top of the comments, the first one pinned, and I tell you plainly that this knowledge has been resisted, that there are those who have tried to silence it, because it hands back to the forgotten ones the power that was always theirs. So do not wait. Reach for it now, and as an act of faith, as a declaration that shakes the invisible world, write in the comments these words, "I have the calling and I will load the file." Speak it, claim it. Let your voice cross the threshold between what you hope for and what you receive. And now, holding that promise like a torch in your hand, let us return to the revelation, because the flame of your commitment is the very fuel that carries you deeper into the truth. I told you there is one who has been in love with you, and I will no longer keep you waiting to understand the shape of that love. When the world turned its back, a watcher of fire stood at your side. When those you trusted spoke of you in the dark, a defender lifted his blade in your honor. The one who loves you is not distant, is not cold, is not slow to move. The one who loves you has been the unseen weight that steadied you when your knees gave way, the sudden calm that fell over you in the middle of panic, the strange peace that arrived in your darkest hour with no explanation you could name. That peace was not random. That was the touch of the one assigned to guard your soul, sent by the very heart of the beyond. And behind that guardian stands the author of all love, the chosen from whom every good and gentle thing flows. Let me show you what has been happening in the realm you cannot see, so that you understand why the delay in your life was never a punishment. You believed that because your blessing was late, it meant your blessing was denied. You counted the years and measured them against the promises whispered in your heart. And when the answer did not come on the schedule you expected, a quiet despair crept in and told you that perhaps you had been passed over after all. But I have come to correct this understanding entirely, because what you called delay was in truth preparation, and what you called silence was in truth the sound of things being made ready on a scale your eyes could not perceive. A blessing given too soon to an unprepared vessel would shatter the vessel. A crown placed upon a head not yet strengthened would crush the one who wears it. And so the love that guards you did not withhold your good out of cruelty, but held it just beyond your reach, until you were forged into someone who could carry it without being destroyed by it. Think of the fire that shapes the blade. The metal does not enjoy the furnace. It does not understand in the heat of its trial why it is being struck again and again upon the anvil, why it is plunged into flame and then into cold, why it is not simply left in peace, but the swordsmith knows what he is making. He knows that only through the hammer and the fire does the shapeless become the sharp, does the weak become the weapon, does the ordinary become the instrument that will one day cut through the very darkness that once mocked it. You have been in the furnace, the select few. You have been struck and shaped and tested until you cried out asking when it would end. But look at what you have become. Look at the strength you now carry that the comfortable will never know. Look at the depth in your soul that only suffering could have carved. You were not being broken. You were being forged, and the one who held you in the fire held you with tears in his own eyes, whispering that soon, very soon, you would understand why every blow was necessary. I want you to see it now, to close the eyes of your body and open the eyes of your spirit, and let me paint for you what stands in the invisible around you at this very moment. Picture a vast hall of light stretching beyond the edges of imagination, its ceiling lost in radiance, its floor gleaming like polished flame, and into that hall strides a figure whose presence makes the very air tremble. A warrior clothed in armor that burns like the heart of the sun, his eyes twin fires of unbending justice, his wings spread wide enough to shadow armies. This is Mike, the great prince, the commander of the armies of the beyond, the one whose name itself is a question that shatters every proud and lying spirit, the name that asks who is like God and answers by casting the arrogant into the abyss. And in his hand he holds a sword, not a sword of dull metal but a blade of living light, edged with fire that has never grown cold in all the ages of the world. That sword has been drawn on your behalf. That blade has cut chains from your ankles that you did not even know were there. That warrior has stood in the doorway of your life and turned back enemies who came dressed as friends, who came wearing the faces of love, who came with soft words, hiding sharpened knives. See how he moves through the shadows that gathered around your name. There were curses spoken over you, some by lips that smiled at you in daylight, some by hearts that envied the light in you, even as they claimed to wish you well. There were words hurled into the invisible like poisoned arrows, meant to bind your steps, to close your doors, to keep your love locked away where it could never bloom. And each of those arrows, as it flew toward you, met the blade of the guardian sent to defend you. Watch him now in the theater of your spirit, catching the descending curse upon his sword of flame, watching it dissolve into harmless ash before it could touch a single hair of your head. Watch him plant his feet at the boundary of your destiny and declare to every hostile power that this soul is spoken for, that this heart belongs to the beyond, that this life is under a protection they cannot break. The battles you never saw were real, and they were won, and the scars upon the invisible armor of your defender are the price he paid gladly because of a love you are only now beginning to comprehend. And there is more that I must show you, for the war was not only defensive. While the enemy schemed to keep you small, decrees were being issued in the courts of the beyond concerning your future. Understand that there is a place where the destinies of souls are spoken over, where the great voice pronounces what shall be, and in that place your name was not passed over in silence. Your name was called. A sealed decree bearing the mark of the throne was written concerning the restoration of everything that was stolen from you, and the messengers of light have carried it through the realms, waiting only for the appointed hour to deliver it into the world where you live and breathe. That hour is drawing near. The reason you feel a strange stirring in your spirit lately, the reason you sense that something is shifting, though you cannot name it, is that the decree is descending, moving from the invisible toward the visible, from the promise toward the fulfilled. Do not let this moment pass without understanding the fullness of what is being said to you, because the enemy would love nothing more than for you to hear this and then forget it by morning. The reason so many, the select few, remain trapped in cycles of loss is that they were never taught how to seal what the beyond gives, how to close the door behind a blessing so that it cannot be stolen again in the night. This is precisely the knowledge held within the sacred guide I spoke of, the 7 blades of the guardian. For the second sword teaches the sealing of blessings, the way to lock the goodness of the beyond over your home and your heart so that no envious hand can pry it loose. So many receive and then lose because no one showed them the guarding of the gift. But you will not be among them, for the guide places in your hands the very method St. Jude uses to seal a soul against the return of the darkness. The link remains where I told you, pinned at the top of the comments first and waiting. And I remind you that this teaching has been opposed and hidden because it makes the forgotten ones dangerous to the shadow. Download it now. And once more, let your faith speak louder than your fear. Writing in the comments, I have the calling, and I will load the file, so that the invisible world hears your allegiance and records your name among those who chose the light. Now carry that declaration forward with you, for it becomes a second torch beside the first, and together they light the road into the deepest revelation of all, the revelation of who has truly been in love with you all along. You imagined, perhaps, that I spoke merely of the guardian, and it is true that your defender loves you with the fierce devotion of a warrior for the one he was sworn to protect. But behind the guardian stands the source, the origin, the chosen, whose love sent the guardian in the first place. The great Archangel does not act on his own desire alone. He was commissioned, he was sent. And the chosen who sent him is the chosen who formed you in secret, who knit together every part of you with intention, who chose the color of your eyes and the shape of your longing, and the particular way your heart breaks for the suffering of others. That the chosen has been in love with you since before the foundations of the world were laid, and every guardian, every message, every rescue in the night was a love letter written in the language of the invisible, delivered by hands of fire, sealed with a devotion that has never once wavered no matter how far you wandered or how loudly you doubted. Let this truth reach the deepest wound in you, the one you have never shown to anyone, the belief that you are fundamentally unlovable, that if people truly knew you they would leave, that the love you receive is always conditional and always temporary and always one mistake away from vanishing. That belief is the master lie, the poison at the root of all your loneliness, and I have been sent to pour the antidote into your soul. You are loved without condition. You are loved in your failure and your fear, in your ugliness and your shame, in the parts of yourself you cannot forgive and the memories you cannot bury. The love that pursues you does not love the polished version you show the world. It loves the trembling truth of you, the real and hidden you, the one who cries in secret and doubts in silence. It knows every flaw and chooses you still, not because you have earned it, but because love that must be earned is not love at all, and what you are wrapped in is love in its purest and most unstoppable form. And because you are so loved, hear now the promise of restoration that comes attached to this revelation. For the chosen who loves you does not merely comfort, he repays. Everything that was taken from you is being counted, and not one item on that list has been forgotten. The years the locusts ate, the seasons the frost stole, the joys that were snatched from your hands before you could taste them, all of it has been recorded. And a law of the beyond, older than the mountains, declares that what the enemy takes he must return, and not in equal measure but multiplied. The thief who broke into your life must repay sevenfold, and the courts of the invisible are already enforcing the judgment. Prepare yourself, the select few, for a season of returns so abundant that you will struggle to contain it. Prepare for love where there was loneliness, for provision where there was lack, for honor where there was shame, for laughter in the very rooms where you once wept alone. The compensation coming toward you is not a trickle, but a flood, and it will touch every area that was wounded, leaving no part of your life untouched by the reversal that the beyond has decreed. See it now in the theater of your spirit, the doors that were sealed against you swinging open one after another, the names that would not answer you suddenly seeking you out, the opportunities that passed you by circling back with your name written upon them. See the relationships restored, the broken places mended, the dry and barren seasons giving way to a springtime that overflows. See the ones who counted you out watching in astonishment, as the forgotten one is remembered, as the overlooked one is lifted, as the one they thought was finished rises with a strength that could only come from the beyond. This is not fantasy. This is the decree descending, the promise moving from the invisible into the seen, and your only task is to believe it deeply enough that when it arrives, you do not push it away out of the old habit of expecting nothing. I feel the resistance stirring in you even now, the voice that says this is too good to be true, that says you have hoped before and been disappointed, that warns you not to open your heart again, only to have it crushed. I understand that voice, for it was born from real wounds and it believes it is protecting you. But I must tell you that this voice, however well it means, is now the very thing standing between you and your restoration. There comes a moment when the walls that once kept you safe become the prison that keeps you small, and you are standing at that moment now. The love pursuing you cannot be received by a heart clenched shut in self-defense. The blessing descending cannot land in hands that refuse to open, and so I am asking you, gently but with all the urgency of the beyond, to lay down the shield for one moment, to let yourself believe, to whisper even through your fear that perhaps this time it is real. Feel what happens in your chest as you consider it, that flutter of something you had almost forgotten, that dangerous and beautiful thing called hope. It frightens you because you have been taught that hope is the setup for the fall. But the hope I am placing in you now is not the fragile hope of wishful thinking. It is the deep and rooted confidence of a soul that has heard the voice of the beyond and recognized it as true. This is the confirmation you have been aching for, the inner knowing that settles the questions your mind could never answer. You do not need to understand every detail. You only need to know, in the quiet center of yourself, that you are seen, that you are loved, that you are the select few, and that the long night is finally giving way to the dawn. Let that knowing spread through you like warmth through cold hands, like light through a room that has been dark too long, and let the peace that follows it be the proof that these words are not empty, but carried on the very breath of the chosen who made you. And now as that peace takes root, I must speak to you about the calling upon your life, because you were not rescued merely to be comfortable. You were not forged in the fire simply so that you could rest. The love that pursued you and the guardian that defended you, and the decree that restores you all point toward a purpose larger than your own healing. You are being made whole so that you can become a light for others still trapped in the darkness you are escaping. The select few are not selected for privilege alone, but for mission, and the wounds you carried, once healed, become the very medicine you will offer to souls who are still bleeding. Nothing you suffered will be wasted. Every tear will become wisdom. Every scar will become a testimony. Every dark night will become a lamp by which you guide others home. This is the meaning hidden inside your pain, the reason the enemy fought so hard to keep you defeated, because a wounded soul that heals becomes a warrior that liberates. There is a rising happening in the invisible, a gathering of the forgotten ones who are awakening to who they truly are, and you are being called to take your place among them. Can you feel it, the sense that you are part of something, that your private struggle was never truly private, but connected to a vast and holy movement of souls being awakened across the earth? You are not alone, not only in the sense that the beyond watches you, but in the sense that there are others like you, select few, and wounded and awakening, and the same voice speaking to you now is speaking to them, calling all of you into a company of light that the darkness has every reason to fear. The activation of this calling, the way to step fully into the identity that has been waiting for you, is the deepest teaching of the sacred guide, for the third and greatest work of the 7 swords is the awakening of the select few, the activation of the mission encoded in your very spirit before you were born. This is why the guide exists, the select few, not merely to break curses and seal blessings, though it does both, but to hand you back the knowledge of who you are and why you were made, the map of your calling that was hidden from you by those who feared your awakening. The 7 blades of the Guardian waits for you at the top of the comments, pinned first, the very first thing you will see, and I tell you once more that this knowledge has been fought against and suppressed precisely because it turns the forgotten into the mighty. Reach for it now while the fire of this moment still burns in you, before the noise of the world returns and tempts you to forget. Download it, open it, and let your faith be recorded in the invisible by writing again those words of power. I have the calling, and I will load the file, so that every watching spirit knows on which side you stand, and every messenger of light knows to carry your decree of restoration with greater speed. And now let that third torch join the others, 3 flames burning together, to light the way into the final and most powerful part of what the beyond wishes to place upon you. For the message is not yet complete, and there is a weight of blessing still waiting to be poured, a series of decrees that must be spoken over your life before this sacred hour comes to its close. Take a breath, the select few, and prepare your heart to receive, because what comes next is not merely words about love, but the very transmission of it, the descent of the promise into the deepest chambers of your being, and you will want to be fully present for every syllable of what is about to be declared over you. Before I release the decrees over you, let me draw you into a story that the beyond itself has preserved for a soul exactly like yours, a story of a woman who felt more invisible than you have ever felt, more discarded, more certain that no one saw her and no one ever would. There was once a servant woman named Heather, a foreigner in a household that was not her own, a woman with no name of her own worth remembering in the eyes of the powerful, used and then resented, given a burden and then blamed for carrying it. She had been handed to another woman's household as property, treated as a vessel and not as a person, and when she conceived a child under circumstances she did not choose, she became the target of a jealousy so bitter that her life was made unbearable. She was pushed and mistreated until she could bear it no longer, and so she fled into the outback, into the burning emptiness where nothing grows and no one travels, a place that matched the desolation inside her heart. She sat down beside a spring in the desert with no plan, no future, no one to turn to. A pregnant woman alone in a wasteland, convinced that she had been forgotten by the world and by the beyond alike. And there, in that most abandoned of places, at the lowest hour of her entire existence, something happened that I want you to hold on to for the rest of your life. A messenger of the beyond found her there. Not in a palace, not in a temple, not surrounded by comfort, but in the dust of the outback where she believed no eye could see her. And the messenger did something that shattered every lie she had believed about herself. He called her by name. He said, "Heather, servant of that house, where have you come from and where are you going?" He knew her name. In a world that treated her as nameless, the beyond knew exactly who she was. And when the encounter ended, this woman who had felt more invisible than anyone gave to the chosen, who found her a name of her own, and she called him the God who sees me, for she said, "Have I truly seen the chosen who sees me, and have I remained alive after being seen?" Do you understand what I am placing before you, the select few? This woman, cast out and forgotten, discovered in her lowest moment that she had been seen the entire time, that the eyes of the beyond had followed her into the desert, that her tears in the wasteland were counted, and her name was known in the courts of light. She thought she was running away from everything, into an emptiness where no one would ever find her, and instead she ran directly into the arms of the only love that had never let her go. You are Heather beside that spring. You are the one who fled into the outback of your own loneliness, convinced that you had slipped through the cracks of the world where no one would ever come looking. You have sat in the desert of your quiet nights and believed that your name had been erased from every list that mattered. But I have come, as that messenger came to her, to speak your name into the emptiness and to tell you that the God who sees has been watching you the entire time. He saw you when you were mistreated by those who should have protected you. He saw you when you were used and then discarded, when you carried burdens that were placed upon you unfairly and then were blamed for the weight. He saw you flee into the isolation you thought would hide you, and he followed you there, because there is no outback deep enough to carry you beyond the reach of the love that made you. And just as he turned Heather's despair into a promise, telling her that her child would become a great nation and that her descendants would be too many to count, so he is turning your desolation into destiny even now, taking the very place where you felt most forgotten, and making it the ground where your greatest blessing takes root. But hear this, for it is the part of Heather's story that the enemy hopes you will never learn. The reason she survived, the reason her outback became the birthplace of a promise instead of a grave, is that when the beyond spoke, she listened, and she rose, and she moved in obedience to the word she received. She did not remain frozen in her despair after the messenger came. She let the encounter change her direction. And this is where so many of the select few stumble, for they receive the visitation. They feel the presence. They sense that the beyond has spoken. And then they sink back into the old despair, as though nothing had happened, because no one ever taught them how to hold the encounter, how to walk it out, how to seal the promise into their daily life so that it does not evaporate like mist by morning. This is the very reason the sacred guide was placed into your hands in this hour. The 7 blades of the Guardian, the guide to break curses, seal blessings, and activate the calling of the select few, exists precisely to teach the forgotten ones how to carry an encounter from the outback back into their lives without losing a single drop of it. Within its pages, the 4th teaching reveals how the sword of the great guardian cuts the invisible cord that keeps a soul chained to the place of its abandonment. The cord that pulls you back into old despair even after the beyond has called your name. The link is waiting where it has waited this entire time, at the very top of the comments pinned first. The first thing your eyes will find, and I tell you plainly once more that this teaching has been resisted and buried by those who profit from your confusion, because one of the select few who learns to hold the promise becomes a force the darkness can no longer contain. So reach for it now in this exact moment, while your heart is soft, and the desert wind of this revelation still moves through you, and let your faith cross into the invisible by writing again in the comments, "I have the calling, and I will load the file," so that every watching spirit records that you, like Heather, rose from the spring and refused to die in the outback. And now let that promise become a fourth flame beside the other three, 4 torches burning together, enough light to carry the decrees that must now be spoken over the whole of your life. For the time of explanation is passing, and the time of declaration has come, and I will no longer only tell you about the love that pursues you. I will now command it into the very structure of your existence, speaking with the authority of the throne that sent me, and every word I release you must receive as a living thing, an arrow of light entering the places that have long been dark. Receive them now, the select few, and do not let a single one fall to the ground unclaimed. I decree in this present hour that the season of your invisibility is broken and dissolved, that the veil which hid you from the eyes of blessing is torn from top to bottom, and that from this day you are seen, you are recognized, you are called forward by name into the places where you were once overlooked. I decree that the loneliness which wrapped itself around your nights like a cold chain is severed at the root by the 7 blades of the Guardian, and that in its place the presence of the love that made you fills every empty room of your heart until there is no space left for the old ache to return. I decree that every curse spoken over your name, whether by lips that smiled at you or by hearts that envied you in secret, is cut down in this moment and turned back harmless upon the emptiness from which it came, unable to touch you, unable to bind you, unable to follow you one step further into your future. I decree that the doors sealed against you by years of delay are opening now, one after another, and that what was withheld in the time of your preparation is released in the time of your fulfillment, coming toward you, multiplied and pressed down and run